Good evening. 4 days since being released from Durham prison, almost 3 days since shooting his ex-lover and killing her new partner, and approaching 2 days since shooting a police officer, gunman Raoul Moat is still at large. Here in Birtley in County Durham, where 29-year-old Chris Brown was killed and Samantha Stobbart was shot in the early hours of Saturday morning, the police presence is still highly visible. Armed and dangerous, Raoul Moat is a 37-year-old bodybuilder and father of 3. The police believe he is still in the region and have appealed for him to give himself up. They also conveyed pleas from his ex-girlfriend on behalf of his children. Acting Chief Constable Sue Sim led today's briefing alongside Detective Chief Superintendent Neil Adamson, who is in charge of the case.
We've spoken to Sam and she has asked us to say the following to you. Please give yourself up. If you still love me and our baby, you would not be doing this anymore.
Reinforcements from neighbouring command areas have been drafted in. The latest patrol has just arrived. These gentlemen are from Cleveland Police. The police themselves across the region are in the spotlight this evening. They admitted today that they were warned on Friday afternoon by Durham prison authorities that Moat may be a threat to his ex-girlfriend Samantha Stobbart. He shot her here just hours after that warning. Then Moat himself telephoned the police and told them of his intention to target police officers. Just minutes later, he shot PC David Rathband in Newcastle. We can cross now to join our correspondent Rachel Bullock at Northumbria Police Headquarters.
Thank you. Today, a thickening web of jealousy, fear and vengeance was revealed by detectives as they released more information about the relationship between Samantha Stobbart and Raoul Moat. Miss Stobbart was feared to be at risk from Moat, a fact already known by Northumbria Police before he went on to carry out the shootings he's accused of. But also more was revealed about the lie Miss Stobbart allegedly told to protect herself from her ex-boyfriend. A lie which detectives believe fuelled Moat's terrible act of revenge against the Northumbria force. Police say Samantha Stobbart was afraid of Raoul Moat, so afraid that on his release from prison last week, she lied to him about being involved with a Northumbria police officer to try and scare him off. Her fears proved to be well grounded and shared by prison authorities who informed the Northumbria police force that Miss Stobbart may be at risk. Detectives today refused to reveal what, if anything, was done in response to that early warning given last Friday. But tragically, we do know that 24 hours later, Miss Stobbart was shot and seriously hurt. Her new boyfriend, karate teacher Chris Brown, was shot dead. Moat, still convinced his ex was dating an officer, is suspected to have then randomly chosen and shot PC David Rathband yesterday morning. A symbolic act of jealous vengeance, police say, against the entire force. Northumbria Police's handling of the early warning is now at the centre of an independent police inquiry.
It is for the IPCC to establish whether we and or any other agencies should or could have done something different or acted differently in that regard. But what I would say is that's not for today. That is a matter that will be resolved in the future. The priority and my appeal today, bringing this back into focus, is the urgency in terms of locating Moat.
PC Rathband had surgery this morning but remains critical. 12 minutes before he was shot, Moat called 999 and warned that he planned to shoot an officer. 50 minutes after the attack, Moat called again and told police they weren't taking him seriously. They are now. Every armed officer from the force is now on duty. All day there's been a very visible and heavy police presence, from the police helicopter in the skies above us to the armed officers on the ground. Extra officers have also been drafted in from the Cumbria force and from other forces across the northern area. Their presence is here for 2 reasons. Firstly, to support Northumbria Police in this manhunt, but also to reassure that everything is being done to protect the public. Detectives also received a letter yesterday thought to be from Moat. In it, he lists his grievances against the police. Officers say they now believe some private people may be in danger of Moat. Each have been given police protection.
Rachel, there's a lot of anxiety around. This is terrifying for those who fear they may be on this apparent list of people that Moat has a grudge against.
Yes, indeed. As well as the people believed to be at risk being given police protection, there's also armed guards in the hospital rooms of both PC David Rathband and Moat's ex-girlfriend Samantha Stobbart. The police are certain that Moat is still in the northeast area, but they're also equally certain that someone somewhere was in contact with Moat over the weekend, knows his whereabouts and could even be harbouring him. They are urging that person, all those people tonight, to get in touch with the police, if only for the safety of the public. Ian.
Rachel, thank you very much indeed. That's Rachel Bullock at Northumbria Police Headquarters, and we're here in Birtley, the scene of the shooting. We've had a lot of information come through from the police today. We're starting to piece together what is a very complex and complicated jigsaw puzzle with so many elements. It involved Raoul Moat's prison sentence, his release from prison, and there are Facebook messages as part of this jigsaw, and there are interpersonal relationships which appear to be at the very centre of the case. His ex-girlfriend, her new boyfriend, a possible vendetta against the police. So many pieces, it's difficult to put them together. Earlier today I spoke with a lecturer in criminology from Northumbria University to try to understand a little bit more about what's happening. Her name is Louise Ridley.
I think we need to think clearly about kind of his experience of having been in the prison environment and spent only 18 weeks in there, and on a short-term sentence like that would mean that you'll come out without any support, without any kind of help, any follow-up. And he's probably feeling quite, I would imagine he's probably feeling quite vulnerable. And it's just, the situation is obviously very, very complicated. And possibly in this case, the prison sentence has made his life even more complicated than it already was.
Because of the nature of the term?
Because it's a short-term sentence. If you're on a sentence of less than 12 months, then there is no follow-up, there's no probation follow-up, no other statutory sector should be involved in your release from prison. All you would have to do is have an address to go to, nothing else.
How unpredictable is his behaviour likely to be now? Will it follow a pattern at all?
I don't think that there's necessarily any pattern, because this case is unusual, hence the media interest. It's not something that happens on a weekly or everyday basis. So I think it'd be hard to really gauge what his next line of action would be.
Interpersonal relationships appear to be at the centre of this. What do you think might be the key to resolving this case?
I think interpersonal relationships are highly damaged by being in prison. I think once you're in prison, that relationships become paramount. You become fixated on particularly personal relationships, and there's no contact, or there's little contact. Often exacerbated by the likes of Facebook, where people can access Facebook, unfortunately, on mobile phones in prison. And you're hearing things, you're reading things about your partners, about your family, which makes your situation even more vulnerable, and often it leads to people feeling very paranoid and very agitated about their personal situation.
Very difficult to predict the next step, isn't it?
It's incredibly difficult to predict the next step, and I think we've got to be careful not to do that. We've got to see the events as they're happening and not try and predict what's going to happen next. I don't think anybody could possibly predict his next move.
This ongoing incident is sending tremors across the region, and here in the village of Birtley is the epicentre. They're used to seeing youngsters on their bikes on this patch of green. They are not used to seeing armed police officers. Today, a stunned community has been in shock. Many of the residents know the victims. Some of them know of the gunman. Our correspondent Kate Fisher reports.
Letters still get delivered. Washing still needs to be dried. But life on this estate changed forever in the early hours of Saturday morning.
It's 2.5 days since Samantha Stobbart was shot through this lounge window. Her partner, Chris Brown, murdered outside. Yet this house remains under 24-hour armed police guard because the manhunt for Raoul Moat continues. It's a disturbing scene on such a quiet and leafy estate.